welcome to a special event, a special, shall we say, episode of Empower Volusia Common Sense. My name is Jason Davis, and we're coming to you from the Iron Bunker, hidden in West Volusia County in the Highlands, guarded by 2 rabid Pomeranians and 1 crazy cat. And thank you very much for joining me today, whenever day this is that you make it. I'm making this a little bit early because, I want to have it ready and out and about so everybody can see the truth about what Independence Day is all about. Now, on the American holiday calendar, no day is more significant than the 4th of July, in which we celebrate the signing of our Declaration of Independence of 1776. The Declaration has proclaimed on the world our separation from Great Britain and emerges as a new sovereign nation. So I felt today it very necessary to correct the misgivings of some of our left-leaning liberals in government. For so many years, I've heard them misquote our Declaration of Independence and act as if it is the law of the land, when in fact it is not. It does not. It states that we are wanting to be our own country. It doesn't establish it. That's the key to the Declaration and the Constitution. This says we are going to do this. This is a letter of intent, and it's intended to dissolve the bonds from the Crown of England. For the leaders of this young nation were brought up in England, most of them were, and they were taught manners and the appropriate uses of words and protocols of business and government and such. So that's why they had to do this Declaration of Independence. It's just the way things were done in those days, and the language is very, very, shall we say, high. And most of the children today couldn't even pronounce half these words, and I have a little struggling with it, and I've been around for a couple of weeks. So, with the wonders of the English language, and they're somewhat lost on our congressmen and women, too, by the way, because they love to just misquote this document. So here we go. So in the interest of full disclosure, the text of the Declaration of Independence comes from the United States National Archives at www.archives.gov. You can type in Declaration of Independence, and it will bring it up. And after rereading this document, you know what? I believe a lot of the liberals are actually guilty of the complaints listed in the Declaration of Independence. You know what? You can be the judge. So, in the interest of full disclosure, the following text is a transcript of the stone engraving of the parchment Declaration of Independence. This document's on display in the rotunda of the National Archives Museum, which I have been to, and it's a very nice place. The spelling and punctuation reflects the original, and the language is quite unique, even though it's English. They use a lot of very highfalutin words. You'll see. So here we go. In Congress, July 4th, 1776, the unanimous declaration of the 13 United States of America. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and the laws of God entitled them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to this separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that, to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute a new government, laying its foundation on such principles, and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence, indeed, will dictate that government long established should not be changed for light and transient causes, and accordingly all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer, while evils are sufferable, than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object evinces, a design to reduce them under absolute deposition. We'll have to reread that line because it's some pretty superfluous language here. Let's try that again. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government, and to provide new guards for their future security. Such has been the patient sufferance of these colonies, and such is now the necessity that constrains them to alter their former systems of government. The history of the present King of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. To provide this, let facts be submitted to a candid world. Little synopsis here, if we will. In other words, what they're saying in this very long-winded whole state, in this whole statement there, it's the king is messing up. He has done things that he should not do as a king, as a leader, and they are calling him out. Kind of what we do here on this podcast. So here now that we've got this is the argument that they start with. This is the statement. They're basically their opening statement. And it says, you're being wrong. We don't like the way you're doing it. And we are going to give you a list of the items that you're doing and grievances. So here we go with their list. He has refused his assent to laws, the most wholesome and necessary for the public good. He has forbidden his governors to pass laws of immediate and pressing importance unless suspended in their operation till his assent should be obtained, and then to suspend he has utterly neglected to attend to them. He has refused to pass other laws for the accommodation of large districts of people, unless those people would relinquish the right of representation in the legislature, a right inestimable to them and formidable to tyrants only. He has called together legislative bodies in places unusual, uncomfortable, and distant from the depository of their public records for the sole purpose of fatiguing them into compliance with his measures. He has dissolved representative houses repeatedly for opposing with manly firmness his evasions on the rights of the people. He has refused for a long time after such dissolutions to cause others to be elected, whereby the legislative powers, incapable of annihilation, have returned to the people at large for their exercise, the state remaining in the meantime exposed to all the dangers of invasion from without and convulsions within. He has endeavored to prevent the population of these states, for that purpose obstructing the laws of naturalization of foreigners, refusing to pass others to encourage their migrations hither, and raising the conditions of new appropriations of lands. He's obstructed the administration of justice by refusing to assent to laws for establishing judiciary powers. He has made judges dependent on his will alone for the tenure of their offices and the amount and payment of their salaries. He's erected a multitude of new offices and sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people and eat out their substance. He has kept among us in times of peace standing armies without the consent of our legislators. He has affected to render the military independent of any and all superior to the civil power. He has combined with others to subject us to jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution and unacknowledged by our laws, giving his assent to their acts of pretended legislation, for quartering large bodies of armed troops among us, for protecting them by a mock trial from punishment for any murders which they should commit on the inhabitants of these states, for cutting off our trade with all parts of the world, for imposing taxes on us without consent, for depriving us in many cases of the benefits of trial by jury, for transporting us beyond seas to be tried for pretended offenses, for abolishing the free system of English laws in our neighboring province, establishing therefore an arbitrary government, and enlarging its boundaries so as to render it at once an example and fit instrument for introducing the same absolute rule into these colonies, for taking away our charters, abolishing our valuable laws, and altering fundamentally the forms of our governments, for suspending our own legislatures and declaring them invested with power to legislate for us in all cases whatsoever. He abdicated government here by declaring us out of his protection and waging war against us. He has plundered our seas, ravaged our coasts, burnt our towns, destroyed the lives of our people. He is at this time transporting large armies of foreign mercenaries to complete the works of death, desolation, and tyranny, already begun with circumstances of cruelty and perfidy scarcely paralleled in the most barbarous ages, and totally unworthy the head of a civilized nation. He has constrained our fellow citizen, taken captive on the high seas, to bear arms against their country, to become the executioner of their friends and brethren, or to fall themselves by the hands. He's excited domestic insurrections among us, and has endeavored to bring on the inhabitants of our frontiers, the merciless Indian savages, whose known rule of warfare is an undistinguished destruction of all ages, sexes, and conditions. In every stage of this oppressions, we have petitioned the redress in the most humble terms. Our repeated petitions have been answered only by repeated injury. A prince whose character is thus marked by every act which may define a tyrant is unfit to be the ruler of a free people. Nor have we been wanting in attentions to our British brethren. We have warned them from time to time of attempts by their legislator to extend an unwarrantable jurisdiction over us. We have reminded them of the circumstances of our emigration and settlement here. We have appealed to their native justice and magnanimity, and we have conjured them by the ties of their common kindred to disavow these usurpations, which would eventually interrupt our connections and correspondence. They too have been deaf to the voice of justice and of consanguinity. We must therefore acquiesce in the necessity that denounces our separation, and hold them, as we hold the rest of mankind, enemies in war, in peace friends. We, therefore, the representatives of the United States of America in General Congress assembled, appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions, do in the name and by authority of the good people of these colonies solemnly publish and declare that these United States are, and of right ought to be free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved, and that as free and independent states we have full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and do all other things and acts which independent states may have right to do. And for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. There you go, folks. That is the Declaration of Independence. That is what we are celebrating on July 4th, which happened some 240 years ago, when people came to Philadelphia, Independence Hall, and signed this document. This document was not quickly written. It was thought. It was worded, as you can see, very, very high, because if you wrote a letter to say, hey, how's it going? In those days, the king would have just tossed it out. No, you had to be right on the money, and they were very learned people. So, as you may have heard, there's a couple of things in here that, I'm thinking our current Congress is doing here. There's one in here, let's see if I can find it, about Department of Justice. Yeah, they are, here it is. They have endowed, let's just put Congress has endeavored to prevent the population of these United States for that purpose, obstructing the laws of naturalization of foreigners, refusing to pass others to encourage their immigrations hither, and raising the conditions of new appropriations of land. In other words, that what they were saying is they were going to stop new immigrants from coming here to the United States. So, and the king was doing that so that they couldn't build an army and amass a force strong enough to overthrow. Unfortunately, he really didn't think of us. that strongly. But this sounds very similar to what's going on. Because right now we got Congress who should be up there doing something to fix our immigration, and they're not. They are not. They're up there messing around with something stupid. But we won't go into that. That's another day, another discussion. Today is a day of celebration. It's the birth of a nation, the greatest nation on the planet Earth. And as you noticed, our opening music today was not the usual, music. It was the Star Spangled Banner, our national anthem, as performed by the United States Navy Band. And, I always get a little chill in the back of my spine because as a military man and a veteran, I always want to say thank you to my brothers and sisters for their service and welcome home. And what better way to do it than to play the national anthem? So with all that, I think we'll do here is we're going to sign off. We're going to move on for the rest of the day. I hope everybody has a safe and happy 4th of July. And remember, maybe one day, common sense might just prevail.